This is Jim Williams with your Hurricane City Tropical Update for August 29th, 9:30 a.m. Here's the latest on Hurricane Irene. Using the HurTrack program, Hurricane Irene is approaching the coast of North Carolina Outer Banks tomorrow morning around 8 o'clock as a Category 3 hurricane, although I think at the 11 a.m. advisory, they might bring that down a little bit. We're continuing to see the system weakening to the south, and which is excellent news for the residents on the eastern seaboard, because it looks like they're going to take somewhat of a direct impact from this system, although there's still a little bit of a wavering in the models, and we'll show you that in just a minute. But here's the position around 12 o'clock, around noon tomorrow. It will be, the worst conditions will be arriving on Cape Hatteras, and at that time we should have about 115, 120 mile an hour hurricane. Of course, that's based on the 5 a.m. advisory this morning. And of course, our current feature at Hurricane City is Cape Hatteras, because they're expecting the worst conditions on Hatteras. And the countdown clock has been activated, less than 19 hours, or a little more than 19 hours away from the sustained tropical storm force wind field arriving in Cape Hatteras. And of course, we'll begin the hurricane warning show as the core of the hurricane moves on shore. Now let's go into the future here, and the system passes just east of Norfolk, Virginia, and that would be tomorrow night. That's Saturday night, going into 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m., and then it begins to pull away from Virginia, and then it heads up towards just offshore of Ocean City, Maryland, as a 95 mile an hour system, and then right near Atlantic City, New Jersey, 95 miles an hour, and plowing right into central Long Island. And this would be at 11 a.m. on Sunday, and then it starts racing off into the northeast. So by Sunday night, this should be a done deal, and it should be racing up into Maine and New Brunswick and getting out of everybody's hair on the northeastern coast. But the question is, how strong is this going to be? Where's it going to go? Well, let's take a look at a few things. First of all, the hurricane hunters are flying around out there right now, and they are, that's the Air Force plane flying around. They also have the NOAA aircraft flying around at 10,000 feet, checking out the low levels winds inside of Hurricane Irene, flying in and out of the eye and measuring the surface winds. And here's the high altitude aircraft. Now this aircraft goes out and samples the environment north of Hurricane Irene to tell what the pressures are and what the wind fields are, to get a good idea where the system is going to go. And it goes into the model data, and this is a very important airplane. It flies around the hurricane, not through it. And all this data has been going into the models, so the models are pretty good, and we feel pretty confident about them. Now here is the latest fixes from the hurricane hunters. You can see it's almost due north here. We started out with 942 millibars real early this morning, then it went up to 943, and now we're up to 947 millibars. So we have a weakening system. Surface winds on the last fix were 55 knots, and the maximum flight level winds 110 knots. That's 125 miles an hour. So they extrapolate the flight level winds, and that's how we're coming up with our 110 mile an hour hurricane. And it'll be interesting to see if they lower the winds a little bit more in the 11 a.m. advisory coming up here in about an hour or so. But we could be very well dealing with a Category 2 at landfall. We'll see how the projections are for landfall. But we have only a 3-degree difference between the inner and the outer eye wall in the last recon fix, and that would indicate that the system has pretty much ended its strengthening phase. All right, let's take a look at the floater loop on our system, and you can see it had an eye this morning, and now there's no more eye. It's just a circular system. It's well developed, but the eye has disappeared. It's still over very warm waters. There's a chance it could strengthen a little bit, but it looks like that strengthening phase has ended. Now let's take a look at some of the models. This was yesterday's models. BAM model over Nova Scotia. The outlier to the left was the GFDL going over New York and eastern Pennsylvania. And there's quite a fan out of the models. Now here's the latest models from this morning. The fan has gotten even bigger. BAM model over Nova Scotia, GFDL over almost western New York here now. So the GFDL model, though, has been a very bad model on Hurricane Irene. It's been to the left all the model runs. It's had a left bias. The good models are right down the center here, and they're the Canadian, the GFS, and those models are taking it over central and eastern Long Island and up into the northeast. So that's the most likely scenario right now. Now here is the European model. This is the best of the global models, and this was from yesterday. going out to the showing where it would be on the 28th, and that's just north of the Outer Banks. Now, if we go to today's run, they have it directly over the eastern Outer Banks, and so it's slowed down. The European is indicating it's not going to be racing as fast as they had originally thought, and it should be over the Outer Banks on the 28th, completely over north the Cape Hatteras area. And then we zoom in to the 29th, and it's north of Long Island, moving almost due north at that point. So if this track verifies from the ECMWF, it could be a very bad situation for Long Island for flooding. All right, here was the HWRF model from yesterday, and that had it, and this has been a much better performer than the GFDL model, by the way. But this model has it over eastern Massachusetts, over Boston here, as an 80-mile-an-hour hurricane, and avoiding the heavily populated areas of New York City and down into Atlantic City and all the cities in New Jersey. It has it going east of that area and up into Massachusetts. And here's the GFDL model. Now, this is from yesterday's GFDL model. It has it going into eastern Pennsylvania, well inland, as a 70-mile-an-hour tropical storm. Let's look at this morning's model run of the GFDL, and it's pretty much an extension of yesterday's model, although maybe just slightly more inland and about 80 miles an hour as it's at the latitude of New York City. So if that model pans out, that would lower the storm surge potential, and it'd be a much better situation if it stays inland. All right, now here are the intensity forecast models. This is the graphic from the Weather Underground, and the best performer on intensity has been the ship model. This is the Aqua model right here, and we're looking at 36-48 hour time frame here, and they're talking about 80 knots, 90 miles an hour. It'll be interesting to see if that trends down now with this system weakening a little bit, but we're looking at about 85, 90 mile an hour winds at landfall according to the ship model, which has been off by 10 miles an hour on average. So it could be 95 miles an hour, or it could be 90 miles an hour, or it could be 70 miles an hour at landfall. It's one of those two extremes. It's being about 10 miles off. All right, now this is the part of the update video that most people like, and that is showing you the best performing models on Hurricane Irene. And here is the AVNI model. Now, this is the second best performing model going out 48 hours, which is we're using as the criteria because we're within 48 hours of landfall in the Northeast. And this takes it right over the Outer Banks and right into eastern Long Island and then up into Maine. And that is the AVNI model, off by about 72.5 miles at 48 hours. So 72 miles off, it could be over here or it could be over here. But that's the thinking on that particular model, the AVNI. That's basically the GFS model with additional information put into it and interpolated. And the best performing model overall has been the TCON model. And the TCON model, again, it doesn't show it going away all the way up in the Northeast, but if you extrapolate this, it'd take it right into Long Island. That's the thinking from the TCON model, and of course right over the Outer Banks. And this model has been off by only 69.9 miles. So between these two models, it's a pretty good indication here that somebody in this area is going to get affected by this in a big way by the center of Hurricane Irene. Now, we ran all the models. About 60 models were run on the Tropical Atlantic model page here, and out of all the models, about 80 to 85% of the models all take it in this area right here, and there's only a sprinkling of models at this point that take it out over the water or simply over New England and maybe into Nova Scotia, but the majority of them are over land here. So that's basically the situation with the models. Basically, most 8 out of 10 models are taking it into the Northeast, and it's remained to be seen what's going to happen as this closes in on land. All right, well, that's it for now. We will keep an eye on Hurricane Irene, and we'll begin our live coverage as the hurricane makes landfall tomorrow morning on the Hurricane Warning Show. Thank you again for visiting Hurricane City.